What happens when a late-night talk show host decides to ambush one of the most talked-about women in the world with the most personal, invasive questions imaginable? Well, you're about to find out. Because what went down between Meghan Markle and Jimmy Kimmel on his show was absolutely explosive. And I'm talking about a full-blown confrontation that ended with security being called and Meghan walking off the set. This is a story about power, respect, and what happens when someone finally says, enough is enough. But before we dive into this incredible story, make sure you hit that subscribe button and drop a comment below, telling me what you think about celebrities standing up for themselves. Your engagement means everything to this channel. So here's what really happened. Meghan Markle was scheduled to appear on Jimmy Kimmel Live to promote her latest charitable initiative. It was supposed to be a straightforward interview, the kind of softball conversation that most guests expect when they sit down on that famous couch. But Jimmy Kimmel had other plans entirely. The moment Meghan walked onto the stage, something felt different. The audience applauded as expected, but there was tension in the air that even the viewers at home could sense. Meghan looked radiant as always, wearing an elegant navy blue dress that commanded respect. She settled into her chair with the grace and composure she's known for, ready to discuss her passion project. Jimmy started with what seemed like a normal opening. "Meghan, thanks for being here tonight. You look fantastic." But his tone already carried an edge that suggested this wasn't going to be the pleasant chat she was expecting. "Thank you for having me, Jimmy. I'm excited to talk about the work we're doing with women's literacy programs," Meghan replied, her smile genuine but cautious. That's when Jimmy made his first move. Instead of following up on her charitable work, he completely ignored her response and went straight for the jugular. "You know, I have to ask, and I think America really wants to know, how does it feel to have your own father completely disown you in the media?" The question hit like a slap across the face. Meghan's composure faltered for just a moment, her eyes widening slightly in surprise and hurt. The audience fell silent, sensing that something uncomfortable was happening. "I'm sorry, I thought we're here to discuss my literacy initiative," Meghan said, trying to redirect the conversation with professional politeness. But Jimmy wasn't having it. He leaned forward in his chair, his expression almost predatory. "Come on, Meghan. You can't just ignore the elephant in the room. Your family situation is messy, and people want answers. Are you ever going to reconcile with your father, or is this permanent damage?" The camera caught Meghan's jaw tightening slightly, but she maintained her dignity. "Jimmy, I came here tonight to talk about something that matters to me deeply, helping women around the world gain access to education. Can we please focus on that?" Jimmy actually laughed, and it wasn't a pleasant sound. "You know what I find interesting? You talk about helping women, but you couldn't even help your own family stay together. How does that work exactly?" That's when you could see the shift in Meghan's demeanor. The polite mask was starting to crack, and underneath it was a woman who had reached her limit. Her voice became firmer, more controlled. "I don't appreciate the direction this conversation is taking. I came here in good faith to discuss important work." "Good faith?" Jimmy scoffed. "Is that what you call it when you trash your husband's family on national television and then expect everyone to just move on?" Good faith? The audience was now visibly uncomfortable. You could hear people shifting in their seats, and the energy in the room had become thick with tension. Meghan sat up straighter, her royal training kicking in, even as her patience was being tested beyond reason. "I've never trashed anyone," she said, her voice steady but with steel underneath. "I have spoken my truth, and I have the right to do that." Jimmy wasn't backing down, though. If anything, he seemed energized by her discomfort. "Your truth? Is that what we're calling it now? Because from where I sit, it looks like you burned bridges with everyone who ever loved you just to get attention. That's when Meghan's composure finally started to crack in earnest. The fire in Meghan's eyes was unmistakable now. She leaned forward slightly, her voice dropping to a tone that anyone who's ever been pushed too far would recognize. Jimmy, I need you to stop right there. What you're doing right now is exactly the kind of behavior that drove me away from toxic situations in the first place. But Jimmy seemed to take that as a challenge rather than a warning. He actually smiled, like he was enjoying himself. Oh, so now I'm toxic. Let me get this straight. Your father is toxic, the royal family is toxic, the British press is toxic, and now I'm toxic too. Do you see a pattern here, Meghan? The audience was dead silent now. You could practically hear a pin drop in that studio. Even the camera operators seemed uncomfortable, but they kept rolling because this was television gold, even if it was deeply uncomfortable gold. Meghan's hands were clasped tightly in her lap, her knuckles showing white beneath her skin. You don't know what you're talking about, she said, her voice controlled but trembling with barely contained emotion. You have no idea what I've been through, or what my family has endured. What you've been through, Jimmy's voice rose mockingly. You married a prince, Meghan. You lived in a palace. You wore tiaras and rode in golden carriages. What exactly did you go through that was so terrible? That question seemed to break something inside Meghan. Her composure, which had been hanging, by a thread, finally snapped. She stood up from her chair so quickly that it startled everyone in the studio. How dare you minimize my experience like that? How dare you sit there and pretend that having a title means I deserve to be treated as less than human? Jimmy looked, genuinely surprised by her reaction, but instead of backing down, he doubled down. Sit down, Meghan. You're making a scene. I'm making a scene. Her voice was incredulous now, all pretense of media training abandoned. You ambush me with personal attacks. You mock my pain. You dismiss my experiences, and I'm making a scene. This is exactly what I'm talking about. This is exactly the kind of gaslighting that I refuse to tolerate anymore. The word gaslighting seemed to trigger something in Jimmy. His expression darkened, and his tone became even more aggressive. Don't throw around psychology terms to make yourself sound smart, Meghan. You're not a victim here. You're a celebrity who made choices and doesn't want to deal with the consequences. Consequences? Meghan's voice was rising now, matching his energy. What consequences exactly? The consequence of marrying someone I love. The consequence of having mixed race. Children in a family that couldn't handle diversity. The consequence of being a woman who refused to stay silent when she was being destroyed? You destroyed yourself, Jimmy shot back, standing up now too. Nobody forced you to do that interview. Nobody forced you to air your dirty laundry in public. You chose to burn bridges, and now you're mad that people are calling you out for it. The tension in the studio was palpable. You could see audience members looking around nervously, unsure if they should intervene or just keep watching this train wreck unfold. The production crew was clearly getting signals from someone off camera, but nobody seemed to know how to handle. What was happening? Meghan's voice dropped to a dangerously quiet level. You want to know what's really happening here, Jimmy? You're trying to humiliate me on national television because you think it will get you ratings. You're using my pain as entertainment, and you're doing it with a smile on your face. That's not journalism. That's cruelty. Don't lecture me about journalism, Jimmy snapped. I'm asking the questions that everyone wants answered. If you can't handle tough questions, maybe you shouldn't have come on a talk show. Tough questions? Meghan laughed, but there was no humor in it. These aren't tough questions, Jimmy. These are personal attacks, designed to make me look bad. There's a difference between holding someone accountable and publicly humiliating them for sport. Jimmy's mask was starting to slip now, too. His television persona was cracking, revealing something uglier underneath. You know what your problem is, Meghan. You think you're better than everyone else. You think because you married into royalty, you're above criticism. That's not true, and you know it, Meghan fired back. I've never claimed to be above criticism. But I draw the line at being treated like a circus animal for your amusement. I'm a human being with feelings, with children who might see this, with a family who loves me despite what you might think. The mention of her children seemed to push Jimmy over an edge he probably should have stayed away from. Jimmy's expression turned cold and calculating. Oh, so now you're playing the mother card? Your children are going to see a lot worse than this interview when they grow up and realize what their mother really did to their family. The studio went completely silent. Even the production crew stopped moving. Jimmy had just crossed a line that nobody should ever cross, and everyone in that room knew it. Meghan's face went pale, then flushed red with a fury that was absolutely terrifying. To witness? Do not, she said, her voice shaking with rage, ever mention my children again. Do not use them as weapons in your pathetic attempt to destroy me. But Jimmy seemed to have lost all sense of boundaries. Those kids are going to grow up without knowing their grandfather because of choices you made. They're going to grow up isolated from their royal family because you couldn't handle being part of something bigger than yourself. That was the moment Meghan truly snapped. Her voice rose to a level that commanded attention from every single person in that studio. You are a disgusting human being. You sit behind this desk every night pretending to be some kind of moral authority, but you're nothing but a bully who picks on people for entertainment. Jimmy looked shocked by the intensity of her reaction. But instead of apologizing, he made another critical mistake. Calm down, Meghan. You're being hysterical. The word hysterical was like throwing gasoline on a fire. Meghan's eyes blazed with an intensity that could have melted steel. Hysterical? Did you just call me hysterical for defending my children? This is exactly what I'm talking about. This is exactly the kind of misogynistic garbage that I refuse to tolerate. I'm not being misogynistic, Jimmy protested, but his voice lacked conviction now. I'm just saying you're overreacting. Overreacting? Meghan's laugh was bitter and sharp. You attack my family, you mock my trauma, you use my children as ammunition, and I'm overreacting. Let me tell you something, Jimmy. I've been called hysterical by better men than you, and I survived all of them. The audience was starting to murmur now, and it wasn't supportive of Jimmy. You could hear people saying things like, "This isn't right," and "Somebody needs to stop this." But Jimmy seemed oblivious to the fact that he was losing the room. Look, Meghan, if you can't handle the heat, maybe you should get out of the kitchen, he said, using the most patronizing tone imaginable. That was it. That was the final straw. Meghan stepped closer to his desk, her presence commanding and powerful. I have handled more heat than you could ever imagine, Jimmy. I've survived racism, sexism, death threats, and public humiliation on a scale you can't comprehend. But I don't have to handle this. I don't have to sit here and let you use me as your punching bag. She started to remove her microphone, her movements deliberate and controlled. You know what the difference is between you and me, Jimmy? When I leave here tonight, I'm going home to people who love me. I'm going to hug my children and tell them I love them. I'm going to wake up tomorrow and continue doing work that actually matters. But you? You're going to wake up tomorrow and still be the same small, bitter man who thinks tearing down others makes him bigger. Jimmy tried to regain control of the situation. Meghan, wait. Let's talk about this like adults. But Meghan was done talking. She had already handed her microphone to a stunned production assistant. Adults don't ambush people with personal attacks and call it entertainment. Adults don't use someone's children as weapons. Adults don't gaslight women and then call them hysterical when they defend themselves. She turned to face the audience directly, her voice carrying to every corner of the studio. I came here tonight to talk about literacy programs for women around the world. I came here to discuss something positive and meaningful. Instead, I was subjected to a character assassination disguised as an interview. This is exactly why so many women are afraid to speak up, afraid to use their voices, afraid to stand up for themselves. The audience was completely silent, hanging on her every word. Even Jimmy seemed to realize he had lost control of his own show. Meghan continued, her voice strong and clear. But I want every woman watching this to know something. You don't have to tolerate this kind of treatment. You don't have to smile and take it when someone tries to tear you down. You have the right to walk away from toxic situations, even if it makes other people uncomfortable. She started walking toward the exit, her head held high. Jimmy called after her desperately. Meghan, come on, don't leave like this. She paused at the edge of the stage and turned back one final time. Jimmy, I'm not leaving like anything. I'm leaving with my dignity intact, which is more than I can say for you. And with that, she walked off the stage, leaving Jimmy standing alone behind his desk, facing an audience that was now openly hostile toward him. The silence that followed was deafening, broken only by the sound of audience members getting up and leaving the studio. Jimmy tried to salvage the situation with a weak joke, but nobody was laughing. The damage was done, and everyone in that room knew they had just witnessed something that would be talked about for years to come. So what do you think? Was Meghan right to walk out, or should she have stayed and tried to work through it? Drop your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe if you want to see more stories like this one. The way she handled that situation was absolutely incredible, and I think it's something we can all learn from.